just me? Or is it getting crazier out there?
7 days is how long it took me to recover from Halloween Ends. Therefore, I didn't really have a concrete plan for this video, but I don't have plans. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not an adult. I'm not a person. So we'll just see where we go with this. I'm Aleece. This is the Late Late Horror Show, and tonight we will be talking about a movie that is actually very dear to me. That being 2002, The Ring, directed by Gore Verbinski. And this movie is interesting to me because, well, for one, I would really be interested in watching this with a teenager now. I saw it in theaters when it came out. I was 15. And The Ring is such a time capsule of the early 2000s, from just the content of the film itself and the film stylistically. Obviously, you've got the landline phones and the tube TVs, VHSs and cassette tapes, obviously. But then you also have like the very green, blue slash green filter that was so big in a lot of movies of the early 2000s, that really kind of started late 90s with The Matrix, but then like so many movies were just like, oh, let's just make everything blue or green. So watching it now is really interesting. Like, oh yeah, like 2002, everything was blue or green in movies. That, and then the first Twilight. But, um, but one of the reasons that this movie is such a dear part of my heart was the experience of seeing it in theaters. And this is something that I miss about just going to a movie theater like nowadays. And it's back then, and when I was a teen, I would go see a lot of movies in the movie theater and a lot of horror movies. And The Ring, the theater was packed, and people are screaming and, like laughing because they're a little bit scared. And it was just such a fun, active environment and atmosphere. And at one point, the kid in the movie, his name's Aiden, he's obsessively drawing rings on a piece of paper, and this guy in the row in front of us just goes, "That's one weird looking sun," and everybody starts laughing. It was so great. And then I'll get into the ending in a bit, but experiencing that ending in a theater packed to the brim, and in 2002, it was very early days of the internet, and you didn't really there weren't spoilers and people like posting all of their theories on social media or on Reddit, and people who are live where the filming is taking place, like taking pictures and posting it on places, and like, oh, like I wonder what this means, or this actor or actress was seen there, what does that mean for the movie? So you would come into movies with very much a blank slate and not knowing what to expect. And especially if you hadn't seen the 98 Japanese Ring, which I had not at that time. I actually only saw that movie a year or two ago for the first time. But to just come into it without knowing what it was about, and the only, there's the trailers and then the really awesome marketing that was possible in the 90s and earlier 2000s that really couldn't happen now, that added to the whole experience. It kind of similar to what Blair Witch did with its with its marketing prior to the movie. But what The Ring would do, a lot of like promotional websites were created, like featuring characters and places in the film, and like the video from The Ring, like the tape that you watch, it would be played over like late night programming without any context, and just to like, so if you happen to be watching whatever channel late at night and the 2 minute, however long video comes on, you're like, just what the hell? That was weird and creepy. What the hell is this? And uh, also, what they would do, like they would put the physical VHS copies randomly distributed outside of movie theaters, just like on people's windshields, like of the again of that the video from The Ring. And that's so brilliant and just something that really you can't do anymore, because just the landscape of media and entertainment is so different now, 20 some years later. But that just like added to the whole experience. And then so I saw the movie in theaters 15 with my best friend. And she has gained such an appreciation for horror movies and haunted houses, even though she is terrified of them. But because I would drag her to these things and I loved it, she'd come with me, and she would. And also, so much of the fun of watching it with her was because she would just get so scared. And however many months later, when The Ring came out on DVD, I bought it. That was actually one of the first horror movies that I just bought for myself on DVD, just because I enjoyed it so much. And went over to her house, and granted, it was like summertime, middle of the day. It's a sunny afternoon, and we'd seen the movie, and the most famous scene towards the ending happens, and she starts screaming and runs out of the room, and I'm just sitting there perplexed, like, you knew this was happening, like you've seen this movie, I was there. But the fact that this movie and that scene in particular just has that effect on people and has that lasting impression is really a testament to the film and the filmmaking and like everything that led up to it. And that's very impressive to me to this day, and it brings me so much joy. But so the movie itself came out in 2002, directed by Gore Verbinski, who would go on to do the Three Pirates of the Caribbean movies and Rango, among others. Screenplay by Aaron Kruger, who is actually a pretty big name now. He did the screenplay for Scream 3, and he was uncredited for writing some of Scream 4 when Kevin Williamson had to leave production. And he also did 3 of the Transformers movies, which but he recently did Top Gun Maverick, and he was either nominated or won an Oscar for, so that's really great. And the score was Hans Zimmer, who is absolutely brilliant. When you think of Hans Zimmer score, The Ring is not like what comes to the forefront of your mind. Like you're like, okay, Lion King, Dark Knight trilogy, Pirates of the Caribbean, Gladiator. He did Last Samurai, and then Dune. He won Oscars for Lion King and Dune. But the sound design and the score of The Ring is something that I do particularly love, because the score, it's not really music per se, it's more atmospheric tones. And what the sound design does, it takes the ambient noises that are present in the tape and just kind of overlays it throughout the rest of the film, and which is really interesting and just kind of adds that heightened sense of like dread, and it's very unnerving. Now, I'm not going to do a big compare contrast between The Ring and Ring or Ringu, how the 98 Japanese original, which is also based on a 91 novel of the same name. But one thing I will say overall, I found the Japanese version more unnerving, just like over like the entire film, because the budget is much smaller, was much smaller for that film than it was for the 2002 American remake. But the way that they did certain things and that very pivotal ending scene is, it's more, let's see, how do I put this? It's less glammed up, which I think strengthens it a lot. And I will get to that in a little bit. Um, and I'm not going to go through the movie, beat by beat. I'm just going to kind of talk about it. So there will be spoilers. If you're unfamiliar with the basic premise of The Ring, there is a videotape that when you watch it, you get a phone call and voice says 7 days, and 7 days later, you die. And within those 7 days, creepy things start happening. Images that are in this video kind of show up in your life. Things come out of the screen that come to life. If pictures are taken of you, your photo looks, it's all whirly and strange. And in the film, it starts off with two teenagers, and one of them had watched the movie, the tape 7 days prior. She dies. Her aunt is a journalist and ends up finding the tape, watching it, and does a whole investigative thing trying to figure out the mystery of it, yada, yada, yada. Um, and, horror shenanigans ensue. And one of the main things that this movie is remembered for, and rightfully so, is its lead, Rachel, played by Naomi Watts. And the character of Rachel, this movie, character wise, it doesn't have a lot going for it in the character department. They are just mostly kind of flat stock characters. But when you have someone like Naomi Watts, who is such a phenomenal actress, that, she can take a character that there isn't a whole lot to and just bring a fantastic performance and add layers and nuance to it. And when you have it directed by someone as good as Gore Verbinski, that just elevates the story and the characters that could be kind of rote into something that is memorable and impressive. And I wish Naomi Watts has been in more horror movies, because she is a fantastic screamer. Like, she is kind of a natural scream queen that never became a scream queen. The year before The Ring came out, she starred in David Lynch's Mulholland Drive. Yes, which is not a horror movie, but I would say, David Lynch is always horror adjacent. Unless we're talking Twin Peaks, definitely like what I would consider a mix of sci-fi and horror. Mulholland Drive has its horror elements. We all know the scene, the guy, what's his name, Golag, or whatever, behind the diner, which I've only actually seen Mulholland Drive once, and it was years ago when my brother was living in LA at the time, but he was visiting, and we drank a whole bottle, I think, of amaretto together, and just watched it, like, camped out on the floor of my bedroom, like, at, like, 3 in the morning, which is either the worst or greatest way to watch a David Lynch movie. But Naomi Watts, yes. So she's brilliant in that. And then not a horror movie, but in 2005, she starred in Peter Jackson's King Kong, and she screams a lot in that. But it's never grating, and she's just, yeah, she's so good. And it also helps that she is just like angelic to look at and just is a captivating presence on like all levels. And yeah, she's absolutely fantastic. Little Daveigh Chase. This was a big couple of years for her. She plays Samara Morgan, who is the girl that the entire mystery of the tape and everything revolves around, and with the hair in her face, who causes all of these things to happen. But the year before, she was in Donnie Darko. She was Donnie's younger sister, Samantha, and she voiced Chihiro in uh, the English dub of Spirited Away. And then, same year as The Ring, she voiced Lilo in Lilo and Stitch. And then subsequently, all of the sequels and the Lilo and Stitch TV series on the Disney Channel, which it's so funny that she's this creepy girl, and she's also Lilo. It's like when you know that you can't unhear Lilo from your head when you watch this. So sorry, I might have just ruined The Ring for you and ruined Samara for you. Um, as far as Martin Henderson is his name, who plays Noah, who is Rachel's ex-boyfriend and also the father of her son Aiden. I have not seen him in anything else. I know he was on Grey's Anatomy. I haven't seen a single episode of. I think it's in its 56th season now. And he's on Virgin River on Netflix. I don't really know what that is, but it's a Netflix show, I guess. He's very pretty to look at, and he's good. He's fine. Brian Cox is also in this movie. He's not a very prominent role, but he's Brian Cox, so he just is fantastic. And this is the second movie I've talked about with him in it. When I talked about Trick or Treat, he was one of my favorite aspects of that movie. And that movie is just one of my favorites in general. But yeah, he's always a treat to watch. And Amber Tamblyn as Katie, Rachel's niece, who is the first victim of the tape that we see, and the subject of many a nightmare for many people in this film. But it's kind of funny that this remake of Ring it sparked a J horror remake trend, or Asian horror remake trend in the States. After this was The Grudge, which was very big, and then also Dark Water, Shudder, The Eye, which did not have nearly the box office nor critical reception that The Ring had. But kind of funny that Amber Tamblyn went on to be in The Grudge too, which I didn't see. I did see The Ring 2, the sequel to the remake, not the Japanese one. I don't really remember it outside of the scene where a bunch of deer attack Rachel and Aiden in the car, and it's hilarious. And I don't think it's supposed to be, but that is all I remember. The CGI deer just pummeling this car and attacking them. So yeah, I won't be talking about the sequels because I have nothing to say because I don't remember / haven't seen them. Also, when doing a little bit of research, found out that Amber Tamblyn is married to David Cross, who I adore. Did not know that, so that's fun. And she was in Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, which is a very big deal as a movie for me and my best friend also, because we're like, oh my gosh, Rory Gilmore's in a movie. Anyway, everything comes back to Gilmore Girls for me at some point. But moving on. Now, Okay, so Amber Tamblyn, what I have to say, and I do think that this was done better in the remake versus the Japanese original in 98, where you see the face of the niece after she's been killed by the tape or whatever it is. And it's still an image that is burned into my psyche that sometimes when I'm trying to go to sleep, I'll close my eyes and I will see that face and be like, okay, time to think about something else. To me, this is probably one of the most horrifying things from the entire movie. So it's after the funeral, and Rachel is talking to her sister, the mom, and she says, I saw her face. And then it's a quick cut, and it's a very well done sort of jump scare, and you have that screeching kind of noise, and it's her in the closet, and her face, her jaw's kind of twisted, and her eyes are looking up into like in the back of her head, and it's just horrifying, and it's so quickly, it's shown very quickly, and then the way her head just droops. I mean, explaining it does not at all get across just how completely unnerving that part is. And I think for a lot of people, as memorable and effective as the ending is, that is what is talked about. A couple of weeks ago, I was on a horror subreddit, and a post was like, what is an image from a horror movie that has stayed with you? And so many people said that particular moment from The Ring. And I agree completely. It's just, it makes you so scared and uncomfortable. And it's also very tragic because the it's the mother of a 16-year-old girl, just imagining finding someone you love, and especially your child, looking like that. And it's so nightmarish and horrific on so many levels. It's so well done. And something that is kind of funny to me about this movie, again, time capsule of 2002 and the early 2000s in general. The horror of this movie for me is owning a landline phone and being expected to answer it when it rings. And before I came here today, I stopped by my grandparents' house because they live not too far from Dino's place where this is being recorded. And I'm sitting in like my grandma's like bathroom vanity area because she's in a nursing home now. She wasn't home, but because they're grandparents, they get 1,000 like telemarketer nonsense calls a day. But I'm sitting there and like thinking about the movie and just kind of getting ready, and the phone is just ringing and ringing. And I'm like, this is horrifying. Oh my God, Samara found me. Or worse, it's a spam call. Oh, this is a nightmare. Yes. And like, oh my gosh, like there's no caller ID. And now someone calls you, you're like, I'm not answering that. Put that on silent. If it's important, they'll leave a voicemail, or I'll just call them back later. But for all you young people who may be watching this, when you had a landline phone and it rang, there was an expectation that you answer it because that's just what you did. You can't ignore the call. I mean, maybe you would screen calls and see if somebody left an answer on the answering machine, but yeah, if the phone rang, you're expected to answer. And
it's the mystery behind who it is.
yes, like it's like, ooh, I wonder who that could be, but also like, yeah, also leave me alone. But oh, like, is this a friend or like a boy calling me? Like, is it my best friend who wants to like talk about nothing for an hour, and then I get yelled at because somebody needs to go on AOL? Oh, things of the past that seem just so old and antiquated to talk about now. But And it was also funny as I'm getting ready. I look to the side, and my in my grandma's thing, like there was a like an embroidery thing of lighthouses, and in the tape, and that's a big thing in the movie. There's a lighthouse featured, and Rachel figures out that, oh, this lighthouse is on this island. I have to go there to try to figure out what's behind the tape. And I'm like, phone's ringing, lighthouses. Am I gonna die in 7 days? Well, I guess I don't have to pay rent anymore. So, all right, come at me, Samara. Let's go. Yeah, Halloween Ends really did break me, didn't it? Anyways. Oh, one thing, going back to Naomi Watts and little acting choices and directorial choices, as I'm sure. They're just little things, like little character moments that take these characters that are kind of just what they are and make them like a more three-dimensional person. There's one scene towards the beginning where Aiden's teacher calls Rachel in to discuss his like behavior and a bunch of weird drawings. And she motions for Rachel like to sit in one of the little kid chairs in front of her desks. And Rachel just sits herself on the teacher's desk and positions herself above the teacher. And I'm like, that was such a little power move. And I just love it. Like, that tells you so much about this person. And it just, you know, the film has a lot of little things like that that make it a lot more compelling than it, by all rights, should be. And the little boy character, Aiden, he's an example of the sort of creepy kid that I kind of don't like in horror movies in general, where and the kid is not like the villain, and you know, they are just creepy and weirdly adult. I don't know. It's really overdone to me. And it's like, oh, you know, this movie is spooky, scary. This child is strange. Are you scared yet? He's a little bit weird and maybe psychic or something. And so, yeah, I'm not a fan of that. But there is one moment towards the end of the film, and it is after the big scene, which I'll just go ahead and talk about in a minute here. But Rachel gets back, and she is just, you know, horrified and devastated. And he's just sitting on the couch, and she's like, go to your room now. And she screams, and he does the best face. He's just like, Jesus, what the hell? It just runs off. I'm like, okay, that was fun. That was a little unintentionally funny. I liked that. He's just like, what the fuck, Rachel? Oh, and also he calls his mother Rachel. And this is a thing that I've noticed in a lot of horror movies. Horror movies and motherhood have a very strange relationship. And particularly if it is a single working mother. And what The Ring does, it shows Rachel as being kind of not a great parent. She's a bit absent. I wouldn't say neglectful, but emotionally neglectful. And throughout the movie, she does, you know, not that she didn't love her son, but she does come to realize maybe just how much she does, and then they form a better parent-child bond. And it's something, The Exorcist, not quite the same way, but The Exorcist seems to does this as well, where Regan's mother, she's a single working mother, she's an actress, and it's almost like it's almost positioned that it's the fault of the mother, that this is a fractured family, that these horrors do come upon their children. And I just do find that quite interesting. And because The Ring is a remake of a Japanese film, I do wonder how much of that bled into the English remake, from a cultural standpoint. And I can't speak from experience. I honestly have no idea. But I do wonder if that is something in Japan where there is this family unit that is not entirely traditional, that kind of looks unkindly on the mother figure. So I mean, that's just some musings that I just thought of. But yeah, I don't really, yeah, not really, didn't have much to go with that. Maybe I will think about it more and fully flesh out those ideas and see what connections can be made, but just something that I find interesting in general. But let's talk about that very famous scene. So, towards the ending of the film, it seems like everything, like the movie's over. The whole time with the investigation behind the tape and figuring out who the little girl is, Samara, and her family. She was adopted because her parents were unable to have biological children, but she had these psychic abilities and was hidden away from the world. She was locked in a space above the barn on the family's property on this island, off of an island off the coast of Seattle. And she was mistreated by her parents, and then she had tests done on her and was locked away in a psychiatric ward and had experiments done. And her mother shoved her down this well, and then where she survived for 7 days before finally succumbing and dying, hence the 7 days. And her psychic abilities, whatever, had the power to basically imprint images on, and burn them, onto physical spaces and into people's minds. So at the family's ranch, they had horses. The horses would drown themselves, and it was driving her adoptive mother crazy, because all of her own trauma was being projected onto the people and animals around her. And Rachel uncovers all of this, and she ends up getting knocked into that well, and it's like she's recovered Samara's skeletal remains, and the truth came out, and she's releasing Samara and putting her spirit to rest. And then the next day she's telling her son, it's over, I helped her, I freed her. And he goes, you weren't supposed to help her. And then we see Noah, the ex-boyfriend that's been working with Rachel this whole time. And it's also very sad because you do get the sense that he is going to be a part of Aiden's life now, that Noah and Rachel are reconnecting, and maybe they might be getting back together. The family unit restored, nuclear family once again. But his 7 days are up, and TV turns on, and it's that shot of the well, and you see Samara crawling out and kind of shuffling closer and closer to the camera, and her hair's in her face, and she leans over, and her hair and her head come out of the TV, and she's crawling out, and then stands, and there's water leaking, and just that shot when she crawls out of the TV for the first time. If I could go back to the theater in 2002 and relive that experience, I absolutely would. The theater went nuts, like gasps and screams, and it was amazing to witness and to be a part of, and never seen anything like this. Hadn't seen the 98 original, but it was just something that nothing like that had really been done like on that level, and it was astounding. And that it's a twist that, you really do think that everything that, the horror is ended, and then this happens, and it is just so shocking and terrifying. Oh my goodness. It's like, I think that between that and the moment of finding Katie's body in the closet, like really do cement The Ring as a staple of horror that will not be forgotten for a very long time, if ever. But looking back now, and also having seen so much more horror films and having read about horror and coming from a more analytic, critical mindset, there are some elements of that part that now, and maybe it's just the passage of time as well, but that are a bit hokey to me a little bit, especially when you contrast it with the 98 original. And because of I think the budget and the nature of Ring is a lot more restrained. Something about that moment comes off a little bit stronger, I think, in the original, like looking back. Because for one, you don't have the CGI element of making Samara, or I forget her name in the original. It's Sadoka or something like that. But just the counterpart. You don't have the CGI overlay that make it look like the graininess of the tape itself, which is kind of neat. But because it's 2002, it's so green that it's like, oh yeah, I'm watching an early 2000s movie. There we go. And it does the sort of the skip where she's standing further away from Noah, and then it's like, and she's directly in front of him. And it's creepy, but it's more gimmicky. And in Ring, it's just, there's something so unnerving about it, because it almost, you don't expect it at all. It has that, the same feeling as her emerging from the screen in The Ring, but it almost feels, it's so supernatural yet weirdly naturalistic that your mind can't comprehend what's happening, but is also like, oh, but this is like accepting that it's happening. It's really, I can't explain exactly, but, and then there's the thing of showing the face. In The Ring, we do see Samara quite a bit as a living girl. There's, the footage of her being filmed when she is having experiments done on her, and when she's in whatever ward she's in. But then when you have her after she crawls out of the TV and is coming up on Noah, you see her face, and it's all very, they make it a creepy face, like almost looks a little bit like Reagan in The Exorcist, but with CGI rather than like practical effects, like practical makeup, and then she kind of like, she does a creepy evil smile, and it just, it kind of takes, like, now I think it kind of takes away from the whole moment. Whereas in Ring, you don't see her full face. The hair is covering her face, but they just do a shot of her eye. And it's kind of bloodshot and rolling back into her head. And it's far, far creepier because it's not so in your face. The CGI isn't like, bam, look at us. Like, oh, this is creepy, isn't it? It's just, it is just scary and unnerving. And I really wish that 2002's The Ring had pulled back a little bit. Because, again, sometimes simplicity and restraint work a lot better than something big and in your face. And that, like, yes, I just needed to talk about that. And one, it seems like the critical reviews of The Ring when it came out were kind of split on the character of Rachel. People either really, really liked her as a protagonist, or they really didn't. And overall, I found the character of Rachel to be a lot stronger, more dynamic than her counterpart in Ring. She's much more proactive as a character, and in Ring, the ex-husband just kind of does a lot of exposition dumping onto her, and he is, I think he like just slaps her at one point. It's a very, it is a very different kind of relationship. She's a very different kind of character in the 98 Japanese version. I do prefer what they did with her in the 2002 remake overall. And I feel really bad for Noah. They kind of make him a little bit of a goofball, and I don't know if it's intentional, but this one scene of, I don't know if they did it to break the tension, but I just kind of rewatch it because it's so funny. When Rachel is knocked down into the well and he's like, I'll find something to get you out. And he runs out and there's, it might be a fire hose or something, but he's running with it towards the house and it catches and he does a complete pratfall onto his back. It's like, and he gets like pulled back by the rope. It's so funny. I don't know why they felt it necessary to do that, but I'm glad they did because it brings my heart a lot of joy. This moment sparks joy for me. What does not spark joy for me is the horse. And I love in the credits, it's really emphasized no animals were harmed in the making of this movie. But when Rachel's on her way to the island, she's on a ferry, and there is a horse, and there's some imagery of like a horse's eye in the tape, and like dead horses lying on the beach. And there's a horse in its container, and Rachel comes right up to it, is trying to pet him through the slots, and the horse starts freaking out because it can sense Samara through Rachel or something. A lot of the lore and the explanations are kind of unclear. And going back and even reading a plot synopsis, I'm like, oh yeah, I still don't fully understand how that worked, but yeah, whatever. But this poor horse gets out and ruins cars, and it jumps off the boat, and you see he's flailing in the water and is hit, and he's like being bonked against the ship, and then gets dragged under. Then everybody, including the poor girl, there's a young girl, she's like, my horse! And they run to the other end, and they're looking at the water, and then, because he got dragged under, and then it's just blood. And I just, again, I'm fine with people dying in horror movies, but don't kill the horse, don't kill the dog, just don't kill the animals, okay? Like, if I ever make a horror movie, it will be like no animal characters will be hurt. Like that is a necessary thing for me. The whole the scene is very well done and it's very chilling, but I just feel really sad about the poor horsey. Also, so we find out that the reason Rachel's after the 7 days are up, she does not die, and Noah does. The reason why is that Rachel had made a copy of the tape, showed it to Noah, and then Aiden had also watched it. So this whole thing is like, they're up against the clock, they're running out of time, trying to figure out the mystery before the tape or whatever it is can claim them after the 7 days is up. But it's revealed that if you make a copy and the tape is shown to somebody else, you are safe from Samara. And her curse, her message, whatever, just has to spread. So she has Aiden make a copy of the tape and just to be shown to someone. I really like what the end of the 98 version does, because it cuts to them in the car and you hear her calling her father. She's like, "Oh, Dad, it's me. I need a favor. It's for son. It's for the kid." Like, oh my, she's going to show the tape to her dad? Grandpa's going to die now? Whew, like I know you want to save your son, but that's cold. But that leads me to wonder, like, it's not like It Follows where it can still get traced, whatever word I was going to say. Pick one. I don't know. It doesn't get tracked back to you like it does in It Follows. Like, you just got to show the tape to whoever, and they just have to show the tape. Like, it can just go on. And then it's kind of unclear of why. Because we learn that Samara is evil, but also, but she was a victim of her parents, neglecting her and abusing her and, her getting tested on by these scientists or doctors, whatever. But she also is intrinsically evil. Like, and I know it's kind of cleared up in the sequels, which from what I kind of remember and just from what I've read, it seems to just make it all the more convoluted rather than clear it up. But this does kind of, as you're watching the movie, and especially for a first time, you're maybe not thinking about this, but thinking about it after the fact and all these years later, you're like, man, this is a pretty easy ghost to avoid. Like, this is a pretty avoidable fate. Like, you just show it to somebody, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're they're gonna die. Just like, hey, show this to the next person you see. Just keep it, it's chainmail. Just keep it going. And I don't know what Samara's end game is. Like, does she just really want to go viral that badly? And this whole conceit would either not work at all or work too well in today's environment. Because, I don't know, you just put it up on TikTok and, people are just sharing it. It just, I don't know, does it just stop once everybody's seen it and everybody dies? Or, I don't know. But also, I know this is going to sound bad, but what happens if you show the tape to somebody that is going to die before the 7 days? Like, I don't know, you go to hospice and it's like, oh, this person only, this person's grandma only has like 4 days to live. And like, okay, just watch this real quick. And then that person just, passes due to their condition. Well, then like what? And if you destroy the tape, is that just the way to foil Samara? Just, I don't know, show it to somebody who's terminal, and then they don't even make it to the 7 days, and Samara's like, God damn it, I didn't think of that. I'm a psychic evil girl, but I didn't even think that far ahead. Like, I wonder about that. Now, this movie in my mind is also, it's very much linked to Signs because of Scream, or not Scream, Scary Movie 3, which Scary Movie 3 is honestly one of my favorites of those of the scary movies. I think because I had seen both Signs and The Ring in theaters, and I knew them really well. So seeing those movies being the focus of the parody was really fun for me. And a lot of the humor, it's a lot more akin to Airplane, and you also have Leslie Nielsen in Scary Movie 3, and he gets to recycle the "just want you to know we're all counting on you" to do like some actual Airplane lines. But now, I mean, I think that might have either like ruined The Ring for some people, or at least like they can't be scared by it anymore because of how it was parodied in Scary Movie 3. Like when Brenda is her 7 days and like, Cindy, your TV's leaking. And as Samara, is crawling out of TV, she's sitting there, she's still eating the popcorn. And then later at her funeral, her parents are like, oh, she looks so peaceful, and her body's in the casket, like, ah. And yeah, because they parody a little bit of everything. They also parody like The Matrix 2, and Michael Jackson is in there a little bit. Like there's a little bit of the others, like for one scene, because they're like, oh, Michael Jackson's a thing. Like, let's do that. I didn't say it was all good, but it's Queen Latifah, like, as the Oracle from The Matrix, and like, oh, are the crop circles and this tape connected? And it's in the tape, it's the lady brushing her hair, and there's, shenanigans. She swats at the screen with a fly swatter, and then the lady from the tape swats her, and they get in a fight, and she's like ripping out her hair, and like, oh, you picked the wrong TV to come out of. She rips out her hair, like, what, you gonna brush now? It's so silly. It's so dumb, but I do love it. And most of the things I really enjoy are the Signs parodies, like especially the flashback to when his wife has been hit by the car or the truck, and the guy who hit the wife is like, hey, Tom, I'll need a ride home. Maybe I should just talk about Scary Movie 3, like the scary movies at some point. But some of those moments are really funny, and I just adore Anna Faris. Like, oh, there's this tape. Has a lot of really disturbing images. Oh, that was Mardi Gras. There was a lot of tequila, and I ran out of beads. Her delivery of stuff is so good. I want to be friends with her. But now, like, it's hard for me to think about The Ring without also thinking about Scary Movie 3. So that's something. I am an old person because I remember the landline phones. Yay. But I am curious if any of you are parents to teenagers, or if any of you viewers out there are teenagers yourselves. If you've seen this movie, or, watched this movie with your kids, I really want to know, what do they think about it? What do they think of the technology? Like, and this is not me being like condescending, like old woman like shakes fist at cloud, like, oh, today's kids, they don't know what technology was. Like, because, in all fairness, how and why would they, other than, just like watching movies and stuff? But like, do they know like what a VHS is? And like, is the concept of a landline just super old and foreign to them? Does this movie hold up for a younger generation? Does it have the same effect with them not growing up with that kind of technology, and also not having a nostalgia for that because they had it, they experienced it personally? Yes, I really want to know. tell me in the comments. And I'm really curious. And I don't know, maybe we'll do a poll or something at some point. But I don't know, can I borrow a teenager to watch this movie with? That sounded weird. Like, give me your children. Before I say anything that could possibly incriminate me for crimes that I have no intention of committing, I think I think this is where I will wrap it up. So yes, this was The Ring. I still love this movie. I think it's a staple for me, and it's part of my young me's horror journey, and I'm very grateful to it for that. And creepy children are creepy, and landline phones are terrifying, and don't ever call me. Text me or message me on Facebook, please. Don't call me, because I will get scared and throw the phone across the room, and then come at you within 7 days to buy me a new phone. So I'm Aleece with the Late Late Horror Show, and as always, my friends, don't answer a landline phone and stay spooky.